So we're all probably familiar with the allegory of Plato's cave, right? So you are chained up in the cave, and the cave represents the somatic, physical, immanent world, and you're only able to see shadows which are being projected on the cave wall. And then the idea is to get outside of the cave so you can actually experience the transcendental realm. And of course, this is Plato's allegory for achieving gnosis, effectively. But it's a kind of gnosis that really involves kind of getting away from the world, getting away from nature. So what I want to introduce here is another kind of allegory that I've cooked up, and I'm calling it Goethe's cave. And the initial premise is essentially the same, right? You're in a cave, and the cave is nature. And you've got these shadows on the cave wall, and you can't quite figure out what the shadows are of. You can't figure out what objects or entities are projecting the shadow, because the shadow just kind of looks like a blob to you. And so you're sitting there and you're looking at the shadow and you're trying to figure it out, and then you look around and you notice that you've got some like little buttons and levers and stuff that you can play around with. And so you start fiddling with that, and you notice that the shadow starts changing. And so you play around with this for a moment, and eventually you start to realize what's happening. The object behind you, which is casting the shadow on the wall, is on some kind of pedestal or something, and your little buttons and levers are actually rotating or tilting the object behind you so as to change the shadow that it is casting. And so by doing this, you're then able to kind of fiddle around with it, and you're able to actually perceive what the object is, even though you can't actually turn around and look at it, because you can perceive all the different shadows that it can cast. And that then allows you to see with your mind the object which is behind you, even though you can't see it with your eyes. So the allegory here then is that those buttons and levers and whatnot that you have in front of you represent what we could call integral or imaginal consciousness, the capacity for the human ego to actually be directly involved in a conscious way and agential way in the functioning of our own imaginal faculties. And what I've been arguing here is that this is a relatively new capability. This is not some kind of ancient wisdom that we are digging up from, the Hermetic tradition or Plato or ancient Egypt or whatever. This is actually a radically new thing that has only really existed since like the late 18th century-ish, if that. There are probably some forerunners, precursors we could talk about, but by and large, this is something that we can do that Plato could not do. And the bigger picture here is that by going through what Jean Gebser would call the perspectival structure of consciousness, we've gotten to a point where we're able to start to see that the inner workings of the world, the noumenon, as it were, consists of these hyperdimensional objects which contain within them all of the possible manifestations, all of the possible disclosures which our consciousness could bring to light. So, of course, in this video, I focused primarily on Goethe as a prime example of this capability. Partially because Goethe was one of the first, if not the first, to really be able to do this in a kind of systematic way.